Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a reality that is profound and, honestly, a little unsettling. We're looking at the double-edged sword of our coevolution with artificial intelligence. You see, AI isn't just a tool we hold in our hands anymore. It's become a massive environmental force. It's actively reshaping our biology, literally rewiring our brains, and potentially rewriting the very genetic legacy we're going to leave to our descendants. This is not science fiction. We are talking about the cutting edge of epigenetics and cognitive neuroscience colliding right here, right now.
So, we have to ask ourselves this massive question. Is AI triggering the next stage of human evolution, or are we looking at a biological involution? Because we're standing at this incredible crossroads. On one hand, we're using immense computational power to master our own biology with unprecedented precision. But on the other hand, we might be accidentally rewiring our brains by outsourcing our deepest cognitive processes to machines. To really grasp what's at stake here, we need to look at both sides of the coin. Let's start with the incredible ways we are mastering our biology.
Part 1. The Deliberate Master, AI and Epigenomic Precision.
The sheer power of this technology really shines when we look at the synergy between AI and epigenetics. We're seeing advanced multi-layer deep learning models like Deep CRISPR and advanced machine learning systems like PureDict step in to radically optimize gene editing. Look, before AI, tweaking the genome with a tool like CRISPR was kind of like performing surgery in the dark. You were always risking off-target mutations that could cause totally unpredictable collateral damage. But today, these AI models integrate massive amounts of complex genomic data to predict the exact efficiency of a guide RNA. They drastically reduce cytotoxicity, and they give us this unprecedented precision for treating genetic diseases we used to think were completely untreatable. It's a level of deliberate biological mastery that is just absolutely awe-inspiring.
But there's a catch, and it's a fascinating trade-off. Deep learning models offer absolute peak performance when they analyze complex, nonlinear biological data. They vastly outperform simple linear models. However, they sacrifice explainability. The internal logic of these neural networks remains largely opaque to us. We know the AI is giving us a highly accurate biological answer to edit a specific gene, but we don't always understand exactly how it got there. Essentially, we're trusting a black box with the fundamental code of our biology. We are the masters, sure, but we're wielding a tool whose inner workings we just cannot fully comprehend.
Which brings us to Part 2, the inadvertent passenger, the cognitive offloading paradox.
While AI is out there helping us master the genome, our daily reliance on it might be quietly degrading our own mental hardware. It's this wild paradox of efficiency versus atrophy. In the short term, AI gives us rapid task completion. It acts as an endless external memory. It feels like a superpower. But by constantly bypassing what cognitive psychologists call the productive struggle of learning, we're racking up a massive capability debt. Neuroplasticity relies on a ruthless use-it-or-lose-it principle. When we stop engaging in deep, sustained reasoning, our brains initiate negative synaptic pruning. The neural pathways in our prefrontal cortex literally suffer from disuse, leading to actual structural thinning. We are trading our long-term cognitive resilience for short-term convenience.
You might be wondering, why not just put the devices down and choose to think deeply? Well, because we're caught in a powerful neurochemical loop. High-intensity digital stimuli and rapid algorithmic rewards cause massive spikes in dopamine. Over time, this constant overstimulation actually causes a downregulation of D1 receptors right there in the prefrontal cortex. Your brain literally becomes less sensitive, meaning you require more and more intense stimuli just to feel a baseline level of normal. This totally disrupts your top-down cognitive control. Instead of reflecting and reasoning, your brain gets trained to reflexively seek the next quick hit of information, habitually rejecting sustained focus. It's exactly why reading a dense book feels so excruciatingly difficult after an hour of scrolling short-form videos. Your brain's reward architecture has been hijacked by the very tools that were designed to help you.
Let's pull back and look at the bigger picture in Part 3, building our digital niche, the Homo Digitalis.
To understand how deep this really goes, we have to look at the ecological concept of niche construction. This is the process where organisms modify their own evolutionary niches through their activities. Think of a beaver building a dam to change the flow of a river to suit its immediate needs, while humans are the ultimate ecosystem engineers. We don't just adapt to a static natural environment, we actively create complex environments like massive urban sprawls and now pervasive digital networks that in turn exert entirely new evolutionary pressures right back onto us.
We aren't just residing in a natural environment anymore. We are emerging from a pervasive digital niche. And this highly engineered ecosystem is actively selecting for a totally new human phenotype, what some researchers are calling Homo Digitalis. Inside this environment, our neuroplasticity is being optimized for rapid shifting, divided attention, and quick external retrieval rather than deep, independent thought. We built the digital environment to serve us, but now that very environment is physically modifying our brains to better serve its rhythms. It's a profound, continuous biological feedback loop.
And that raises the stakes significantly, taking us to part 4, the generational echo, transgenerational epigenetic inheritance.
Because we have to ask, what if these modifications don't stop with us? This is where epigenetics comes rushing back into the picture. Epigenetics is how environmental factors change gene expression without altering the underlying DNA sequence. Think of your DNA as the hardware, and epigenetics as the software that tells the hardware how to run. Epigenetic transgenerational inheritance happens when these environmentally induced changes are transmitted through the germline, the sperm or the egg, to future generations, even if those future generations are never exposed to the original environmental trigger. It's literally the biological memory of our environment, passed down the line.
Let's trace how this timeline actually works, because it's wild when you break it down. If a gestating female, the F0 generation, is exposed to an environmental stressor, the F1 fetus is obviously directly exposed in the womb. But it goes deeper than that. The reproductive germ cells developing inside that F1 fetus, which will eventually become the F2 generation, are also directly exposed to that stressor. Because of this overlapping exposure, to prove true transgenerational inheritance, meaning a trait passed down completely independent of the original environment, scientists have to look all the way to the F3 generation, the great-grand offspring. If the F3 generation shows the trait, it means the environmental stress left a permanent inheritable mark.
So how does this happen on a molecular level? It works through mechanisms like altered germline DNA methylation patterns and modifications to histone structures. Basically, think of these like intricate volume knobs for our genes, turning certain expressions up or down. Studies already show that severe environmental stress, dietary shifts, and chemical exposures leave lasting epigenetic marks. For example, we've seen changes in specific microRNAs like LET7F5P, which are heavily linked to neurodevelopment. The profound question for our era is whether the chronic cognitive stress, the neurobiological imbalances, and the pervasive sensory overload of our digital niche will permanently alter these epigenetic markers and echo all the way into the F3 generation. Are we unknowingly writing our digital distraction into the biological software of our great-grandchildren?
So, where do we go from here? Let's talk solutions in Part 5, the hybrid future, augmenting independent human reasoning.
To navigate this, I want you to consider a brilliantly simple quote from cognitive psychologist Daniel Willingham. Memory is the residue of thought. It's such a profound insight into how our brains actually work. If we use generative AI to completely remove the need to think, we remove the friction required to learn. Biological neural networks require active, sometimes uncomfortable effort to maintain their structural integrity. We absolutely must retain the cognitive friction necessary to build memory and skill, or else we just surrender our cognitive sovereignty entirely.
The goal shouldn't be to vainly compete with AI, and we definitely shouldn't passively surrender to it. The goal is to build a deliberate model of hybrid intelligence. We need to use AI to offload the mundane, specifically so we can free up cognitive space for higher-order strategy and deep synthesis. This means designing human-in-the-loop systems. Let the AI generate the raw syntax of a coding project or the basic summary of a dense report, sure, but you have to actively retain control over the architecture and the strategic nuance. We have to purposefully design workflows that demand our own verification and that productive struggle so we avoid widespread deprofessionalization and biological atrophy.
Which leaves us with this final thought for today's explainer. As our minds become irreversibly intertwined with artificial intelligence, will humanity act as a pilot guided by technology, actively retaining our cognitive sovereignty, or will we become mere passengers, confusing the illusion of understanding with the actual act of thinking? The choice is ours, and our biology is watching. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.